Ruth. I'm the legislative lead, and we've got all of our action team leads here doing the presenting. Um, if you want to wave, if you're one of them, you might be, yeah, good. So that was Laura, Kathy, Nick, and Valerie, and our intrepid tech and wonderful staff person, Zoe. So everyone, welcome. Hmm.
Hi, Patty.
There you go.
Welcome to our
Patty.
training. Hello. Hi, everybody. If you could put your name and your city in the chat and your pronouns.
We'll get started at 3:05, just to give a little bit more time for people to stray in. Looks like we have people from Humboldt. That's awesome.
Oh, great. Good.
That's a pretty long commute.
Thanks for making the trip.
How's everybody enjoying the lovely weather this weekend?
Oh,
It's too warm for February.
Okay.
all right. We can get started. And welcome for those of you who just joined. We're asking people to put your name and your city in the chat. And it's fine if you want to show your faces. We want to thank our presenters and facilitators, and I'm just going to call their names. And if you can raise your virtual hand, you'll end up at the top of everybody's screen, and they can take a look at you. So, Lisa Chang and Jack Lucero Fleck, I think he's here. Myself, Mary Ruth Gross, Zoe Jonick, Kathy Carriage, Laura Niche, Nick Ratto, and Valerie Ventry Hutton. And we will be dividing it. Have a breakout session a little bit later, and each one of us will be leading your group. And I hope to get to know you better. All right, here we go.
You want to move the slides, Nick?
Yeah. So Laura Niche is going to she's our ED, and she'll give the overview of 350 Bay Area and 350 Bay Area action.
Hi there. I am here in Santa Rosa, and the executive director of both 350 Bay Area and 350 Bay Area Action. And those two organizations are legally separate organizations, so that we can get more involved in lobbying and electoral work on the 350 Bay Area Action side. But these two organizations have common goals and a common platform, which is a lot of other agreements that we share. But we are here to speed the shift to clean energy, clean and just transportation, and clean buildings, all of which add up to cleaner air. We also are supported in that work and in those goals for our local groups that work for the city councils and the county boards in Contra Costa County, the East Bay, which is its own little critter, 350 Marin, 350 San Francisco, 350 Silicon Valley, 350 Sonoma, and Napa Climate Now. Those groups all have their own locally set goals, and we support each other and we try to support them. The staff tries to support them as well. There's a lot of opportunity there for people to get involved locally, and we encourage reaching out to those folks, and we can help make introductions. So on the 350 Bay Area side, we have our policy focus areas, which are the same as the shared goals. And we do work, education, and working in the agencies primarily. And then we also have a youth-led mobilizing team that helps get people out and active and activated as they reach out and contact people and bring awareness to the different issues. It's an amazing and exciting group. They have a monthly meeting that I encourage you to sign up for. And then we are here to talk about the legislative committee's work primarily. So we focus on state legislative action, same goals: eliminate fossil fuels, promote clean energy, work on transportation issues, including land use, which is a pretty complicated mess. And then there's a federal team right now, and that's obviously a little bit like in abeyance. And then we have a communications team that supports all of that work as well. A separate committee is our Electoral Accountability Committee, which is focusing on getting climate champions elected and then holding them to their word as they go out and actually get elected. And then we start at the beginning of our relationship. And then we do a lot of get out the vote work in general whenever it's necessary. Next slide. So the goals of our legislative work are pretty simple. We want to get good climate bills passed and bad bills blocked. And that the foundation of that is building relationships and establishing ourselves as a trusted and reliable source of information and even deep analysis about our climate policy goals. So at the bottom, which is the foundation, we educate and mobilize the public and our partners. All of our work is done in coalition. We are known for good analysis that we also make succinct and easy to digest in our toolkits and our in-person actions. And we meet with legislators to build those relationships. We educate them and we lobby them. And I will say, as one example of that, we had, this is not the state legislative level, but this is the kind of relationship we want, where we were working with a local climate elected city councilor, and she said, "You are my climate committee." And we met with her regularly. And then another person who was running for a county board, we met with him to help him craft his climate policy. And I have to tell you, we pushed really hard. And his platform on climate was even stronger than what we were pushing for. So he really dug in and supported our work. So back to you, Mary Ruth.
Okay, well, we have three action teams, and the action teams are where the bills are tracked, the educating each other on the bills and on the issues happens, and it's where actually the bills are identified to begin with, as we go through a process of coming out of our action teams, the research about what bills have been introduced and which bills really fit into our goals that we're trying to achieve. So it's eliminating fossil fuel dependence. That's a really broad category, but our goal is to stop drilling, stop extraction, shipping, processing, exporting, political and money influence of oil and gas. And so those are all different places where we could have legislation that will slow down fossil fuel extraction or, change it or get rid of it. And we also have we sponsored legislation to hold the fossil fuel companies responsible. And Zoe's going to get into a particular campaign later in this presentation about how do we hold many different ways of holding them responsible. Clean transportation and land use, lots of different legislation. I mean, California, in a way, has been famous for looking at transportation and air quality, and they were the first state, I believe, back in the I think it was the 60s, where you had smog devices here. I wasn't in California at the time, so I can't take credit, but it's a long time looking at transportation. There's still a lot to do, and there's ways that we are having to battle the federal government at this point about the our fuel standards, about our fuel, how many how many EVs we're going to have sold in California. Anyway, and then clean energy. Boy, there's a couple of really big investor-owned utilities in California that try to maintain control over especially the electric grid. I mean, obvious, but also the how do we get our energy? And so we really want legislation that's going to promote solar and wind and local connections, uh, and energy justice, making sure that everyone has the availability of clean energy. We have done some proposing and supporting legislation to increase solar, to increase rooftop solar, to increase local grids. There's a name for them, and I don't remember what it is. Over to you, Laura.
So we are resting on broad shoulders. The landmark foundational wins, the landmark climate bills. We got CalPERS and CalSTRS. We're part of getting CalPERS and CalSTRS to divest from coal. We've been working like crazy to get them to divest from all fossil fuels, to no avail, but that work continues. Fossil Free California is doing it. That was a spin-out group from our group from a long, long time ago. We helped pass the 100% clean energy bill by 2045. That was a big, big deal and super fun to work on. And then another big one was the drilling setbacks bill in 2022. And then those aren't the only bills we've gotten passed for sure. But I will say, without 350 Bay Area, it is likely that these bills would not have passed. So, but the very foundational bill was AB 32, passed, I think, in the mid-aughts. I can't remember. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger had established, he had an executive order that established our emissions reductions targets for California. And then AB 32 codified that in a very brilliant bill that was super simple. It just said, here's the target. It gave authority to the Air Resources Board to figure out how to meet the target, and set up an environmental justice group to monitor and make sure that, as much as they can, community groups, to make sure that environmental justice was considered along the way. And then the legislature has backfilled CARB's regulatory action with legislation to strengthen their positions. So it's kind of a brilliant way to go about it. And then SB 32 more recently updated those emissions reductions targets. So last session was, oh my goodness, it was kind of a nail biter. There was a lot of good legislation, a couple of really, really bad bills, and we really had mixed success. We were swimming upstream against, big money interests, which we always do. But then Newsom was just pushing bad legislation, and there were a lot of shenanigans that we absolutely did not approve of. But when things happen super quickly and the governor has his shoulder behind it, it's um, very hard to work against that. But we did pass a couple of good bills. We got a public funding of elections proposition put on the November ballot, which is very exciting to support candidates that don't have big money behind them. So that's very, very helpful for not just climate work, but all progressive work that we're trying to get done. We extended the CEQA exemption for climate-friendly port projects. We don't like to mess with CEQA, but sometimes, we're on with strange bedfellows on that. We passed we called it the lobby on your own damn dime bill to limit the amounts and types of expenses that the investor-owned utilities put onto their rate base. It's ridiculous that the ratepayers should be paying for lobbying. That's crazy. And we passed a cute little bill allowing passive house efficiency standards. That's not going to change the world, but it was good that it got passed. Newsom vetoed a lot of good bills, but the one a couple that we were really disappointed in was data center water use reporting. That's really in the pocket of big tech, which is very much so. And then there was a great virtual power plant bill that got vetoed. It had bipartisan support. There was no issues with it, but the IOUs didn't want it, so we vetoed it. And then the grid regionalization bill got passed, even though we opposed it. We've been opposing it for like 4 or 5 years, and it got jammed through at the last minute. So that wasn't great. This year, we've got a lot of more good data center bills. A lot of the stuff that we're trying to do is not super aggressive because Newsom is vetoing good bills and pushing for bad bills. But we're in there. There's a lot of stuff, good stuff going on. It'll be fun to get involved. I think it's going to be a good year, very instrumental. And then we'll have a new governor, and maybe we can really get crazy. So stay tuned. And then to follow our progress, I'll put the link. Just go to 350bayareaaction.org. It's easy to find our endorsed bills. They are now still, you'll see as we go through this presentation, we're not quite there yet to update it for 2026, but you can see for 2025 what we were working on. Mary Ruth.
And well, our legislative communications team is really a team that our function is to support the work of the action teams. And part of that, you'll see, you probably have all received, because I think you're probably all on our mailing list, action alerts. So for particular bills, the action team leads and the bill trackers will ask the comms team to produce a mailing, a blast to everybody who is in the constituency of, say, somebody on a particular committee. Or at the end of the session, we send out something that's got all of our bills. We send that out to our 25,000 members and say, please send this list to your legislators. And quite a few people do. We have I don't know the actual percentage, but it's apparently more than average where people actually take action. We also send out informational pieces to our mailing list, and we maintain the website. We do, when we have time, we create blogs and post the blogs. And a couple times, 2, 3 times a year, we send out a more general newsletter about where we are and what's coming up. Also, the other thing that we do is we have people who can turn the sometimes dry explanations of what a bill is and turn them into web posts, for Facebook or Blue Sky. We don't do X anymore. But we always need more people to help do that kind of thing, taking the information about the bills and edit the information so that it's really digestible for people who might not be so far into the weeds as we are on what's going on. Kathy Carriage, our Legislative Relations Chair.
This shows the area that we work in. And as you can see, it's pretty big. The Bay Area covers 7.8 million people, and it's very diverse. So we have people in dense urban areas, we have people in suburban areas, but we also have quite a few people who are in pretty rural areas. So, the districts can be pretty long, big. Some of them extend almost all the way up to California and Oregon. Solano County, we're really sort of extending into the Central Valley. So, it's a big area, lots of different interests. Um, I know this might be hard with this kind of thing, but think about how many of you know who your state legislator is, your state senator and your state assembly person. Just raise your hand with that react key down there. Well, we got a few. 8. So, in general, people tend to focus more on federal legislation. So, not as many people are familiar with state legislation, even though it's incredibly important. If you don't know who your state senator and your assembly person is, that's not unusual. A lot of people don't. And you can find them, and somebody can put this in the chat, or I will when I'm done, at findyourrep.legislature.ca.gov. And you can also see what district you're in if you go to calvoter.org. And if you find your legislator, you can go onto their page and they will always have pretty specific maps of their district. Okay, next page. So our legislature is also, even though we're predominantly Democratic, I mean, we have super majorities in both houses. It's not always liberal and it's not always environmental. So we have some people like McGuire, Weiner, who are in our corner almost all the time. Uh, and we have other people, and I probably won't name names here, maybe I will later, but who are not, and who sometimes we really have to lobby. Um, so why do we meet our legislators? We meet them for many different reasons. We meet with people who are really good on the climate to get information from them, to find out where we can help them, and really just to let them know, yeah, they do have a constituency. We are out there, we support them. We meet with moderates to push them because sometimes they need a push. They don't always hear from a lot of people. And we give them information, we can answer their questions. And we also meet with conservatives. And there are a couple in the Bay Area that are not great on climate issues. And we meet with them to make sure they know that they have a constituency where climate is very important. And we also want to build relationships with them and we want to inform them about what's going on and hopefully convince them to vote our way. So it's important to meet with as many legislators as we can. Okay, next slide. So this shows all the assembly members in the Bay Area, and you might be able to look at your city under some. I live in Assembly District 11, Lori Wilson. And next to it, you can notice she is chair of the Transportation Committee. That's underlined. That is really important because transportation is one of our issues. She is not always great. And one of the bills she authored last year that unfortunately passed, we opposed. But those people are particularly powerful members of the legislature because if a bill does not get out of committee, it's dead. So before a bill goes anyplace else, it's going to go to a committee. Let's go to the next page. And these are the senators. So you'll notice there are one half the number of senators as there are assembly people. So each Senate district has 2 assembly districts. And again, these districts, a lot of them changed the districts were funky getting aligned, but most of them have changed to their new redistricting. But I do want to make sure everybody knows that Prop 50's passage did not affect our state legislative districts. It only affected the federal districts. Um, I think that is it. And I think Valerie is next.
All right. So what you see in front of you it's basically a summary of California's legislative calendar. And the legislative calendar is your guide to getting things done. We'll be going over this in different ways. But there are a couple of key points we want to mention. In California, the legislative session runs for 2 years. People use the term session kind of indiscriminately when they refer to each year, but essentially a session runs 2 years and new sessions start in odd numbered years. So 2026, the year we are in, is the second year of this 2 year session. And this year's, if you see the dates, this year's session will run through the end of, basically the end of August. It's shorter than the first year because everyone has to go home and prep so they can be reelected. And that's literally why second year shorter than first year. So this year can be a very intense year. August, you're running a mile a minute. So let's look at some of the key timelines. We just passed a key deadline, February 20th. That was when all new legislation for 2026 had to be introduced by February 20th. There are sneaky ways around this, but technically, February 20th is when all new legislation is. Part of the reason we held the training now is, in theory, all new bills have been introduced. Another key date, May 29th. Bills have to pass out of their first house, their house of origin. We'll explain more about this after we get through this slide. And finally, bills have passed through both houses by August 31st. And you go, that's not too bad. January through August. But notice there are 2 recesses, and one of them is a month long. Now, the good news about those recesses is that's when we often try to make meetings with our legislators because they're supposed to be back home in the district. Again, this is a guide. You use the calendar as a guide. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a very quick overview, and we'll go into things more in detail in the next series of slides, Laura and I will. But this is, how does a bill become a law? So let's look at it. Bills can be introduced in either house. They can be introduced in the Assembly or in the Senate. And here's the part. Some legislators actively solicit ideas from constituents for bills. So if you have an idea for a bill, write your legislator. I mean, and by the way, if they select your idea, they're very proud of it. They let people know that this bill was recommended by, a constituent. So as I mentioned, bills can be introduced in the Assembly or the Senate. Since this is the second year of a legislative session, bills introduced this year either pass or are dead. That's it. So once a bill is introduced, it can take up to 30 days for the bill then to be assigned to what we call a policy committee. And by the way, what we're going over here is the policy process, not the budget process. You sometimes hear about the budget process and things getting snuck in the budget process. That's a whole other process. We're focusing on the policy bills. So once the bill is introduced, it will be assigned by what's called the Rules Committee to committee policy committees. These are committees you've heard of: transportation, agriculture, environmental quality, and the Assembly has its names for its committees, and the Senate has a separate names, and you can find these online. They're wonderful, wonderful websites. Bills can be referred to more than one committee, and that really can step up the game. One of the important pieces is once a bill is introduced into committee, that's when we jump into action. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But this is a very, very good point to try and meet with legislators and influence whether or not you want to support, oppose. You learn about the bills at this time, and you can also potentially have an influence. Now, what happens during the time when the bills are in policy committee is there is an opportunity for public comment. And this is when 350 and our allies and partners and Zoe's team, thank you, Zoe, for the mobilizing team, they will be calling. We will be writing letters of support or opposition. We'll be trying to write letters to the editor. So there are a lot of tactics we can take at this time period. If your bill gets through, and let's say you want the bill to get through, but if the bill gets through the committee, your policy committees, it then goes through to appropriations. Appropriations is a black box. Its public hearings aren't held, but that doesn't mean we don't take action. We still try and influence during the appropriation process. If it actually passes appropriations and gets through what is called the suspense process, and it is a suspense process, you literally don't know until the last days of the process whether your bill's going to make it through or not, it will go to the floor for a vote. Now, by the way, at all these stages, your bill can be amended. And at some point, you may start off not liking a bill, then liking a bill, and then not liking it again. So you monitor your bill throughout all of this. If your bill gets through all the committees and gets to the floor, you still have a chance to make a point. But if your bill passes, fantastic. It then goes to the next house. And in the next house, it's rinse and repeat. You go through all of the process again. You go through your policy committee, you go through appropriations committee, and it will go to the second house to be voted on. If it passes that house, but let's say it's amended, it has to go through a process called concurrence. If that happens, then it's sent to the governor, who can either veto it or sign it. Next slide, please.
This is the "We Are Here" slide. So we're just getting to the very end of this process. So, we look like ducks on a pond, but our little feet are paddling like crazy because we're trying to figure out, there's 2,000 bills approximately pitched every year, put together every year in California. And so we have to find the ones where we can make a difference. And, and that have to do with climate. So sometimes it gets a little tangential just because our help getting a bill across the finish line is important. So right now, there are good bills out there that have maybe been written by outside groups or whatever, and so you try to find an author who's an elected official. So that process is almost done. We participate in that a little bit, depending on what the topic area is. And so we're really trying to help pitch promising bills to get home in this process. And then for other bills that sort of come to us through our extensive networks that seem promising, some of them we really have to dig in because we don't know if it's a good bill or not. Some of them are so complicated that it takes a lot of time and a lot of research to figure out whether we support it or not. And then we also have to find out if we like a bill or don't like a bill. We have to find out kind of who's on our side. And then we create this tracking document where we can stick all of our resources, which is called the Bill Resource Doc. And we'll go into that in more detail later. Next slide.
All right. So I mentioned briefly about the importance of committee hearings. So as Laura said, once we've identified the bills that we're either going to support or oppose, we're going to either, we're a good regional group, but we're a regional group. So we try and build allies and partnerships with groups throughout the state of California. And this is where we can work together. So at this stage of the game, we're going to be building support for our position by finding like-minded groups. And we will meet with legislators. We submit letters of opposition and support. We write letters to the editors. We attend hearings. Here's the deal. In order to attend a hearing these days, you have to go to Sacramento. But we work with our allies. If we can't do it, they will talk on our behalf. Another point we'll do is we will, for example, last year, there was a bill introduced by Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, AB 222, that was going to track energy usage in data centers. We reached out to the office and they said, hey, do you have any recommendations? And we said, oh, well, since you asked, and you actually could supply them with recommendations for amendments to improve the bill. They took them seriously, which was very much appreciated, but that tells you the importance of building the relationships with staff members. It's not necessarily with the legislator. And an important part of what goes on when these bills go through committee hearings is you want to monitor revisions because your bill can be severely and negatively impacted. Laura.
Well, I get to talk about this black box. So, we have tried everything to penetrate this black box. So we kind of do what we can, but the last stop point is really, key, which is we just kind of have to hope. So when we're lobbying at the committee level and in the appropriations included, so there's a little bit of a formal process for submitting our support or opposition letters. and I just want to say this is a complicated process, but one of the things we're very good at within our action teams is making it simple. So you get a ton of support if you decide to pitch in and track a bill, and we will step through with you. It's not as complicated as it sounds, except every once in a while you're like, how is this a thing? So we keep learning. But we, for the appropriations committee, we track who's on that committee. We try to do direct lobbying there. I have no idea. I don't know that anybody does how useful that is, but we do it anyway. And then we cross our fingers. That's all we can do.
And Laura, I'd like to add something to the appropriations, and it's something that Lisa Chang did. Lisa, I'm calling you out here. She actually called each of these committees has their own staff. And sometimes it can be very useful to call the staff of the Appropriations Committee or the Natural um, Resources Committee and talk to them about process. And Lisa did and got some marvelous information on the fact is we were always told, oh, don't bother sending a letter to appropriations unless it's very fiscally focused. And what ended up happening is this person who we talked to said, no, submit it. If you've got some good points, our committee will take them under advisement. So as Laura said, you cross your fingers. You don't know if you've had an influence, but it's surprising the type of information you can get from actually calling some of these committees sometimes. Once you've crossed your fingers, and if your bill has gotten through appropriations, it will go to the floor. And this is where it really is useful to work in coalition, where you can issue what's called a floor alert, which is this one-page alert with all these organizations on it saying, please support or oppose this bill, and these are the reasons. And this is a time when we really do try and get out to the press and try and influence legislators in Sacramento. Next, please.
So just before everybody gets kind of swamped in the details, I want to say that go to Sacramento and do this, or pick up the phone and call the staff. The people who do it, it's fun. I know it sounds really weird, but they viscerally get that you've elected these people to work for you. And watching some people who've been doing this for a long time, I was with somebody who's amazing, and she literally cornered this staffer, really important staffer, in an elevator and wouldn't let him off the elevator until she like made her pitch. It was inspiring. Okay, so then it's in the second house, and we go again through the committee hearings. This is when we have to be very vigilant because they make revisions. They can change 3 words, which change the entire thing of the bill. It's not up to just you. You can get the alerts through the systems that will walk you through, and we will hear about it from people who have big paid staffs, or at least bigger than ours. So again, it's not like a super high stress kind of a situation, though when things start moving quickly, we have to move quickly as well. So again, we give public comment, we submit the letters through the portals, and then we reach out to our 22,000 people that get our emails and have them do the same. So that's when, we just keep our people who pitch in regularly, we give them talking points that are super simplified. It's very exciting. And a lot of times we'll put very focused attention on key electeds that are either supporters of the bill that we're trying to pass, or somebody that we're trying to flip, or whatever. So it's a pretty good process, and again, it can be fun. Next slide.
Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, for the floor vote?
No. Well, anyway, the bottom line is if it gets through the committee hearings and it gets through appropriations, and one of the things I did want to point out about appropriations, right now, the chair of appropriations in the assembly is Buffy Wicks. So if you happen to be in her district, and I see Kathy nodding, that is a potential opportunity to influence someone. So if earlier on we pointed out what chairs different legislators have, if you're in someone's district and they're chair of a committee that's important, you use the influence. Sometimes it can work. Floor vote, if it gets through appropriations, then once again, this is the second house. There's going to be this is when we do really rely on press and press coverage to all of our Bay Area electeds. We have seen situations where our elected officials, sometimes we've watched votes just to see how our officials react, and we have seen officials change their vote as people are calling in, because this is where we've literally staged call-ins, write-ins, and we've seen people change their vote. It's actually kind of interesting. Next slide, please.
So then we have the process. If the second house passes a slightly different version, it has to go back. In California, it's called concurrence. In the federal government, it's called reconciliation. Again, we have to like keep our eyeballs on it to make sure it doesn't flip badly at the last minute, but we haven't had a lot of that. Next slide.
This is where it goes to the governor. And I'm sorry, Kathy, thank you for laughing. And it really depends on the governor where you press the levers to try and get him or her to sign. For Gavin Newsom, press is important, and press at the federal level is important. So we literally have worked with groups to try and capture his attention. And it has worked. Some organizations have literally gotten him to say, oh, yes, I'm going to sign that bill. And we later heard he hadn't planned on signing it. So this is where, again, working in unison, working with your colleagues. And even when you've said, I've called 10 times, call an 11th time to your legislator. And let's see if we can get the governor to do what we want. Next slide, please.
Oh, if we could just get the governor to
Do what we want. This,
slide.
by the way,
Oh.
when we share the slide deck with you, you're going to get this one. You're not going to go through all of the ones we gave. Next slide, please.
So the governor's office actually does more than just veto good bills. I'm not going to stop. This guy is driving me crazy. So, but yeah, so basically it's the governor that really sets the broad goals for the state and is the spokesperson. So I would say that Governor Newsom does a pretty good job of this. If he would walk the talk, we'd be in better shape. I just want to say that, I talked about one of these good, really great bills, the 100% clean energy by 2045. That was a nail biter. If he hadn't gotten a ton of pressure from groups like ours and our group, he wasn't going to sign it, which is madness. It was crazy. Anyway, and then also the governor has an instrumental role in the budget process, and therein lies room for a lot of shenanigans. It's not the point of this particular meeting, but we also keep our eyes on the budget process because there's not supposed to be, but policy legislation gets stuck in there all the time. The governor can also issue executive orders, which I think everybody here knows, and directs the state agencies and assigns their commissioners and board members in many cases. So we try to keep an eye on that. We are unhappy with some of the Public Utilities Commission commissioners in particular that seem to be really too under the sway of the for-profit utilities. And the governor has, even though we're trying to clamp down, we have regulations and regulatory authority to clamp down on oil drilling permits, he's still signing those. So overall, C- on Governor Newsom. So not super thrilled. Next slide.
Once a bill is passed, a bill is just a general outline of what the legislature wants done. It then goes to the state agencies to basically make the rules. And this is a whole separate process. The legislative group doesn't get that involved with state agencies, but it's important to know, and sometimes we do. 350 Bay Area will get involved very actively with some of the state agencies. But some of the agencies and these are the groups that there'll be rulemaking, and this can take several years to get through a bill to actually become a law that's enforceable. But some of the agencies we tend to work with, California Air Resources Board, CARB, oversees air pollution regs, runs the low carbon fuel standard and invest program that needs to be updated. Clean vehicle rules, California Public Utilities Commission, which Laura can share a lot more about than I can. And California Energy Commission, energy efficient buildings, cleaner transportation, renewable energy. Finally, the Geologic Energy Management Division, CalGEM. These are the groups that issue permits to drill and other permits. And they're the ones that are supposed to be doing the setback exclusion areas for fossil fuel drilling. Next slide, please.
Okay, so here's the lead page for the legislative info or ledge info site. And this is really one of the foundational research and data points that we use that's very useful. So let me go, and everybody should be able to see AB 1167 here. So we'll go to the home page first. And on that page, all kinds of good ways to get to the bill. You can do keyword searches here. You insert the bill number and it'll pull up what we just saw. I'll show you that again in a minute. There's also ways to subscribe. When bill updates occur, you can receive an alert. Okay, so 1167. So if you notice the tabs across the top, here we have bill info. And it's showing you here the title of the bill, and then if there were any amendments that were made, that would also show toward the top here. Here's where you can track the bill, and this I'm showing you on the right-hand side here if you want to get alerts for that bill. So this row of menu options here at the top, just under the title, is very useful. But before we do that, let's just scan through quickly. The first section here is really a digest of the bill, which is exactly what it claims to be. Then below that is the actual language of the bill. And frequently you'll need to look at all of that as opposed to just looking at the digest, but the digest serves some purposes as well. The good news is that when there are amendments, they are in strikeover format. So you will see the new language in italics, blue, or different colors. So at least when it's a fairly lengthy bill like this one, you can quickly see amendments. The next tab is votes, as you might expect. It's talking about the different committees. You heard earlier about the committees. So here are the ones that the bill this bill particular has been through. So it's at the bottom here, it started in Assembly, Utilities, and Energy. This shows you that it passed. It shows the votes. And then on to Assembly Appropriations, the floor, and then over to the Senate, to the other House. Energy, Utility, Communications is the equivalent committee. Shows that it passed, and then on to Appropriations, and then the floor votes. Under History, this gives you kind of a line-by-line or an event-by-event documentation. So if there are amendments, the committee referrals that you just saw on the votes is kind of reflected here. So it's basically step-by-step where the bill goes once it is submitted to the Rules Committee, which committees it's headed to, what the votes were, where it's now, how it's progressing through the first House and then the second House and then the governor. Okay, so here's another very important source of information. This would be the floor analysis, the bill analysis section, where these are all hyperlinked, and some of our best sources of information are the bill analysis. So an example of one is, I'm showing you here on the screen. It gives you, it is a relatively impartial, thorough analysis of the bill. The other document we have that is kind of a workhorse document that tells us information we need to make decisions about whether we're going to support or oppose a bill is the fact sheet. But that fact sheet is generated by the author, and it can be somewhat biased on the author's side. So these bill analysis, which occur from, can be typically produced by all the different policy committees and appropriations committees, and even the assembly, the floor vote. There's usually a bill analysis for each of those steps. And those are, again, usually very useful if hopefully they exist. You can see the analysis. Gives you background information, comments, and fiscal impacts, related prior legislation in this case. And also very useful is support and oppose groups. So you can see who is in this case, if we were supporting this, we would want to know who the opposition is to see what kinds of issues we would have to deal with. And then there's arguments in support and opposition that come up. So that's very useful. I had mentioned a fact sheet before. Real quickly, I'll just show you an example of one here. And again, this is written by the author. It does give you, a concise statement of the summary of the bill, the background, and the solution proposed. But again, there can be some degree of bias in that. So back here, let's see. And the rest of these are just, you can get some information through these, but there's not, those are the key parts, I think, of LegInfo. Okay, so that takes us into the first breakout session.
I think we have a 3-minute break.
Okay.
After you introduce the breakout, but then we get a 3-minute break.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through most of what's on here by talking about LegInfo already, but we're going to walk through in the breakout LegInfo so that you can see some of the individual things that I quickly scan through.
So let's start our 3-minute break. I have a timer here and I can time that. And Zoe's going to be working on sending us off into breakout sessions.
Well, welcome back. I think LegInfo is just a huge resource. And the best way to get to know anything about it is just to go on and fool around. And I hope you guys did get a chance to figure out how to subscribe, because that will keep you updated with bills. And I use it all the time when I'm meeting with a legislator. Or if you're meeting with one, I'll go back and I'll check their voting record. And if they voted for some things that we supported, first thing I do is thank them. And if they voted for stuff that they didn't support, I may not say anything, but I do like to appreciate it when they did vote our way. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about our face-to-face meetings with legislators, which we keep going back. So it's not always easy to get a bill passed, so we keep pushing until we finally win. And as Laura's mentioned before, we do a lot of work in coalitions. And as you're going to hear Zoe go into more detail, and as Laura and Valerie went into, we do have a lot of approaches. But I'm the person who sort of tries to organize meeting with legislators in person. And we'll set up meetings with individual legislators or their staff. Often meeting with their ledge director is really great. Sometimes they will have designated staff members who work on environmental issues. So we do this to counter some of the money that's put into legislation. You can see how much big oil spent in 2020. And last year, the utilities were on a lot of bills, so they spent a lot of money too. So putting our face and getting ourselves right in front of the legislators is sort of a nice way to counter that. Um, we'd like to have a legislative lead in every assembly and every Senate district in the Bay Area. It's really important when people go to set up these meetings that it's a constituent. It's much easier, I think, to get a meeting in general if you're a constituent. Um, we try to meet at least twice during the legislative year, during the session, once towards the beginning. And then when the bills have gone into their next house, we'll meet again then. And as Valerie mentioned, there's a big recess in July. So that's a good time to meet with them. Prior to COVID, we frequently met in person. Now we usually meet by Zoom. There are pluses and minuses to that, but one plus is that we don't have to drive to Sacramento if you want to meet with the ledge director or the legislator themselves, and that's a pretty big plus. And I have found in general it's better to meet with their ledge director than to meet in their district office with their district representative, who often doesn't really know what's going on. Um, we do work a lot in coalitions. So when we have these meetings, we'll often pull in different people. And that might be groups like Physicians for Social Responsibility, who, if there's any health component of a bill, can really provide sort of expert assistance. Last year, there was a woman from Indivisible who really had sort of become an expert on one of the bills we opposed. And she came to some of the meetings we set up, and we also went to some of her meetings. We especially, though, want constituents and young people at those meetings. And I was at a meeting once with can't remember if it was a high school or college student, and they were expressing, their interest in everything. And the staffer said, "Hey, email me and I'll talk to you about internships." So sometimes, things like that can happen. We don't send people into these meetings unprepared. So we do a lot of preparation prior to the meeting. Lots of times, especially the first time people go to meet with their legislature, they just want to show support by being there. They don't necessarily want to talk, and that's fine. After an introduction, if you don't want to talk, then we don't expect anything of you. But it is really nice to have someone besides the legislative lead speaking. So in general, we really try to have people talk about different bills. And that also it's better than just having one person talk all the time. We usually have a pre-meeting and we divide up tasks. I give a lot of information to everybody and I make resources available to people, and I usually prepare the agenda because, as Valerie said, uh, bills change throughout the session, and a bill that we might have supported might get amended, and then we don't want to support it. So our priority bills at the beginning of the year may not be the ones in August. Also, bills that we support die. So, they're going to come off, and then another bill is going to move up into a priority place. So we talk about our top bills. Lots of times we'll maybe limit it to 3 or 4 because you can't go into so much detail. We also like to leave information about all the bills that we support. And in addition to explaining our positions, we want to hear questions, so we want to know if the person we're meeting with, whether it's a ledge director or whether it's the assembly or senator themselves, have questions. Are there concerns? Is there something that is keeping them from supporting the bill? And we also want to find out what their priorities are. Are there environmental bills that they want to get passed that maybe we should know about? And sometimes you can even if you don't have the information, you just say, "I'm going to get back to you." And sometimes getting back means you're going to go to one of our allies who's really supporting the bill, or going to the person on the bill policy committee and saying, "This is the question. I don't know what the answer is. Can you find this out for me?" And then emailing the person you spoke to. So I think we can fill an important role in really talking to legislators, and if they've got a specific question, answering it. Um, as Laura mentioned about a city council member, I have had a state legislature say, "You're the only environmental group that talks to me only about climate issues." So we do have this role to play. Usually the meetings are half an hour. Sometimes we get an hour. Every once in a while we only get 15 minutes. But in general, the meetings are about half an hour. And yeah, if you'd like to participate in these, if you'd like to be a lead, if you'd like to just come to a meeting in your legislature, uh, so I've got a question. What is the role of the ledge director? It's actually not one person. Oh, in the ledge director in the um, assembly in this on the staff on the legislator's staff is the person who is sort of keeping track of all the legislation and will often and a lot of them are very experienced. Many of them have worked with different legislatures. So, they sort of know what's going on and they'll be the ones, a lot of legislatures won't tell you what their position is, but they'll be the ones that might say, well, we need more information on that, or yeah, we've seen what's happening with this bill. So they're the person in the district office who really seems to know the most. Okay, and next we have a picture. We try to take a picture of our meetings, and I'm going to turn it over to Zoe.
Yeah,
Oh, you can see, I think there's Valerie.
yeah, some familiar faces. Um, Hi all. I also realized I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Zoe, a she, her pronouns, calling from Oakland. I'm the lead organizer with 350 Bay Area, 350 Bay Area Action. I also help facilitate our youth-led mobilizing team that was referenced earlier. Um, and I'm going to just give you all the example of uh, one of the bills that's been like a key policy thing that we've been lobbying in a bunch of different ways about, which is the Make Polluters Pay bill or the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund bill. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of this legislation, and if not, it's basically a bill that what it does would set up a one-time penalty fee on the largest polluters that operate in California based on their historic emissions. And think like Chevron, Exxon, Shell. Yeah, based on their historic emissions and based on the then concurrent damage that they've done to California. And that one-time fee, which would be in the billions of dollars, would go to help pay for the climate damages that they have caused to the state, as well as preventing future climate damage. And 40% of that money would go to frontline and directly impacted communities. So this is a really important bill that has had a huge coalition with it. It's just grown in an insane way in the last couple of years. 2 years ago, it passed a very similar legislation, Polluters Pay Superfund legislation, passed in Vermont and New York. And the bill was introduced last year. And there's over 200 organizations that have been working on it. It's a massive coalition. And as part of the efforts of lobbying on this is something that has to not only pass out of, but like all the bills we were talking about, not only pass out of the committees, but also has to pass these floor votes. And because it's a bill targeting some of the most powerful industry giants, it's going to have a ton of opposition and very well funded opposition. So we knew it was a big task and we knew it might not pass on the first try. And that unfortunately was the case. The bill authors decided to not move forward with that version of the bill this January because they didn't want it to get voted down or to die. They wanted to hold it and make sure that we had the power to vote yes on it. And it's like a tactical decision made with the community groups working on it. So different things that we did, uh, lobby days where people would go, we'd organize a bunch of groups and constituents from all over to go to Sacramento, and have meetings with their legislators or other legislators about these issues. We'd also have organize people to go to hearings and make public comment at those, and we'd have rallies outside and around and try to get press coverage of those. With the mobilizing team, something that we were really trying to do was we would pick a couple targets in the Bay Area that we think were impactful targets and kind of ones that you think, okay, this person's position will be influential if we can move them onto our side. For example, we were targeting for a while State Senator Aisha Wahab, who's the state senator for like Fremont area, Fremont Hayward. And so we went a number of times to farmers markets, and we went to the No Kings Day rally to collect signatures from people that lived there. We told them about the bill and we asked if they would sign something to ask their state senator to support it. And we actually ran into Aisha Wahab at the No Kings Day rally and got to like in person ask her to like support the bill, which was interesting too, because that's another thing is you can like bird dog these people where you like go up to them in public and you ask them to say on the record, how do you how do you stand on this bill and kind of put them on the spot. So that's something we've been doing too is kind of trying to just raise the pressure and raise the public awareness of like people are paying attention to this issue and they're going to pay attention to how you are voting on this issue. And once they understand that, oh, I can't just like slink by on this one, I have to actually have a statement. That is something that can have a big impact. Um, Again, phone calls and emails are really huge too. Um, Postcards, letters. We did postcards at a tabling where we get people to sign things and send it off to their person. And just this last weekend, some of our volunteers on the youth mobilizing team went to the California Democratic Party convention to get petition signatures that would go out to the legislators, but also to go up to the candidates for governor and ask them, would you sign this bill if you were elected? And kind of put them on the spot and ask them to like commit uh, in front of a camera. And we got more commitments than we thought we would. So that's very good. And we also talked to some other we ran into Senator Tom Umberg, who was running for a Board of Equalization, but he's currently a senator that's also a target for this bill. So, asking him and putting him on the spot because they're in this position where they're trying to curry votes with their people. So, making it clear that if you want to be considered as a climate person or as a serious candidate, you have to have a position on this bill. That's been really impactful. And this is just one example of all the different levers that you can use to kind of push on these legislators, their staff, the press, their constituents, things like that. All of these play into it. Um, One more that I almost wrote about, and then I'll stop talking, which is that we've also been pushing for city council and county resolutions. So getting our local elected officials that even have an even smaller constituency to sign on in support of this and say like the city of Oakland wants you to support it, which puts more pressure on Buffy Wicks, for example, because all of the people in her district are trying to support it. Um, so that's a little like example of some of the work that's happening and can happen when we kind of put our minds to it and are working together on these issues to try to pressure our elected officials. And I think I'm going to pass it to Nick.
We're going to walk through a BRD. See if I can.
I'll just flag that I saw a question said, at what stage in the build process is gathering this support, pressuring decision makers the most effective? And somebody else can add something to it, but part of my understanding is that it's shortly before they are going to vote on it is one of the most impactful times because they may not, if it's something where they're only going to vote on it during the floor vote and you're talking to them at the beginning of the session, they might be like, why are you talking to me about this now? I'm going to forget about this. Though it's good to bring it up. But I think the time when they're looking and thinking about making a decision is the time they're the most malleable. And somebody else can correct me if they have a different thought.
I think you're right, Zoe.
Yeah, I would like to add though, if you do have a legislator that's on a committee that where the bill's got to go through, uh, that's also a good time to talk to them.
If a bill is complex and technically complex, it's sometimes useful to start educating gently as early as possible. As Zoe said, with Make Polluters Pay, the Climate Super Fund, it could take several years of education.
So we were going to just walk through a BRD. I think I would ask Valerie and Mary Ruth and Laura to feel free to chime in as well. Um, so as was mentioned earlier, BRD stands for Bill Resource Document. This is sort of our fundamental document, kind of the one-stop shopping. If anybody wants to see if anybody is interested in the bill, first of all, it's used um, as the source document for 350 Bay Area Action, even deciding whether they want to support or oppose the bill. This is what is presented to the group that decides on whether we're going to endorse a bill. And then from that point on, it keeps accruing information as information is available. And if you are interested in that bill, or you have something to you want to learn about the bill, this is where you would go. We use links as much as we can so that it's very, still very concise. So as an example here, you've got AB 1167, and the link that's at the top here is the link into LegInfo for that particular bill. You can then see that it's pretty self-explanatory. The bill authors are listed. Whoever's in charge of this bill as far as tracking it is the action team lead. There are key links. As it's shown you previously, the fact sheet for that bill is linked here. And any other documents, including the position letter that was mentioned earlier, that we submit to the legislative portal to state that we are supporting or opposing the bill, that would be linked here. Any other ancillary documents that are important here, you can see there's a FAQ for AB 1167 that's added here. There may be coalition letters if we're working with NRDC or any other groups, Center for Biological Diversity, whoever, they may have created a coalition letter that either supports or opposes the bill. And so that would be added there. Mary Ruth, did you have something?
Well, just that this is a sheet that if you're tracking a bill, basically you're the owner of it. And it starts out blank. But you don't have to know all this to start out with. If you recall earlier when Valerie and Laura were going through what do we do at each stage of a process, you will find out information, you will build relationships, you'll find news articles, or you'll have an article from another group. And I don't know about you, but I can't tell you how many times when I have put aside, I said, oh, I'll read this later, I'll find this later, and then I can never find it again. So this is the place where you put the link to the thing that you think you might need in the future. So it's it you it gets to be this full over time. So this is a BRD, a bill resource document that has been filled out over months. So nobody is required to know everything or put in everything in there all at once. The other really good source of information you have is your team, is your action team, because there'll probably be people there who have been through this process more than you have, and your action team lead will have ideas, and somebody will know that, oh yeah, the exact same bill practically lost in because we didn't get this person's vote or that person's vote 2 years ago. So it's all that information you will gather over time.
Yeah, so to take a little bit of a step back, let's say you decide that you're going to track a bill. So the action team leads, I think, will give you the blank BRD with your bill number on it, so you don't have to worry about finding the template or anything like that. And then you'll just like get on the internet and see who's doing what. Some of these bills have a bunch of stuff about, what's going on with them, and everybody's weighing in, and other bills there's crickets. So it's not a one size fits all kind of a process. So you start out by just trying to find out what's going on with the bill, what are the key issues, who's supporting it, like all of the basic stuff. And then you start just slamming that stuff into the bill resource doc. It's like the messy hanging file folder. Like you're just cramming clipped newsletter, whatever, it's like stuff in there. Give sort of a visual picture. And then as the bill tracker, you are responsible for sort of distilling a lot of that stuff. So you have the links. You say, what is the case for us supporting or opposing this bill? It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. Like you just get the information down, and then the comms team will come in and create the narrative in a more cleaned up way. That takes a lot of pressure off of our bill trackers. Back to you, Nick.
Okay, so I don't have much else. I think that it's self-explanatory in terms of the fields you fill out, and as was just discussed, there's only a small fraction of it that needs to be filled out initially, gathering some basic information. Hopefully there's a fact sheet available from the author early on and maybe some background information, but you put in the link to LegInfo and indicate why it's important for 350 to consider it as a important climate bill. And then it's presented, you're being supported at every turn with your team lead and your teammates. And we decide whether we're going to bring it forward to the 350 Bay Area Action Committee, the policy committee that decides whether we're going to endorse it, whether we're going to support or oppose it. And then as was mentioned, it begins to accrue more and more information as it moves through the committees, if the bill's amended, all that sort of thing. So I don't have anything more unless people have questions.
And out of respect for time, we will try to move it along. But if anybody has any questions, now's the time.
We're also going to be able to share with you lists of, I'm going to call it information sources where you can find information on your bills. I'm going to put something in the chat, but we'll share that later as well.
Great.
Okay, I think we can move toward our closing. We tried to end at the half hour, but we're a little past it. So if we can go down to the slide where we say what you can do, next steps.
Was it not seeing that? Oh, here we go.
Yay, wait, back up. Back up one. Join a team. I'll say it. I'll talk it. Yes. Just a reminder, we have 3 action teams that track the legislation. We've got a communications team that really takes the information that you all develop and puts it in a form, whatever format is what the kind of media we're aiming to use. And at some point, we will have another federal team again. It just lobbying and at the federal level, we still do some things for, we ask people to testify at some hearings, policy hearings. Okay, next slide. I'm putting in the chat the link for you to sign up. This is not, you're not signing on the dotted line here. You are and indicating interest in possibly joining a team. And you don't even have to decide which action team. The action teams they meet once a week usually, and so you can drop in, you can lurk for a while, although people will see you. They're not huge teams. You don't have to decide today, but for more information and if you're interested in being a part of this, really, it's a pretty amazing process that people who go through, do this bill tracking really learn a lot and communicate a lot. So there's the where you sign up in the chat, and um, I think that's it. We do have monthly meetings, and we partner with the 501(c)(3), the 350 Bay Area, and they're not. Sometimes the monthly presentations are about a specific bill, or they're about an issue that people have expressed interest in, whether or not it's actually one of the areas that we track in the legislative team, because there's so many issues around climate in California. Anybody on this team have anything to add?
Oh, I'd just like to add that also, if you'd like to be one of the people who meets with the legislature, please let us know that.
Yes, fill that out in the form too. Yay.
I was just gonna add, I'll send it in the chat. There's a new tool that if you also just kind of want to have a better sense of what your legislators are doing, a new
Mm.
tool from CalMatters.
Yeah.
You just put in your email and your address, and it'll send you a weekly digest of what your state senator and assembly member did that week. So like what bills they signed, if there's any notable like quotes or like
Yeah.
things like that. It's a good it's a good starting point for just like keeping abreast of that stuff. So definitely use that if you need.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. Okay, any questions? Raise your virtual hand if you have any questions or comments or appreciations. We always take appreciations.
Thank you very much. And
I'll-
thank
Thank you
everybody
for
for
coming.
coming.
I'll also add a quick plug if you're interested in getting involved in the youth-led mobilizing team. We also meet weekly and we try to partner with the legislative team as much as possible. If you're interested in getting involved with that, you can either email me at zoe@350bayarea.org or I will put a link in the chat. Yeah, shout out Tika. Just today, just as a fun thing of fun things we do in the mobilizing team. Today we were at the SF Botanical Garden doing a volunteer day and got lunch after. So lots of fun opportunities
Sounds good.
at 350 Bay Area Action and 350 Bay Area.
Thank you, Martha.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Martha.
All right. Well, we will reconvene in our action groups if you sign up.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for